want to stop political violence, stop attacking our law enforcement as the Gestapo. If you want to stop political violence, stop telling your supporters that everybody who disagrees with you is a Nazi.
There was a shooting this week at an ICE facility, and I'll just go through a couple of those details. The man accused of opening fire, according to ABC News, is at a Dallas ICE field office on Wednesday, killed one detainee and wounded two others, has been identified as a 29-year-old person. I won't say his name. He very likely acted alone, and he did not expect to survive the attack. He did not. He died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Has Dan eerily a similar profile to the Charlie Kirk shooter? Somebody who does not seem to have a coherent political ideology, has no clear influences. Once again, I'll say this is not Luigi Mangione. I feel like when we got to know Luigi Mangione, we got to know somebody who clearly had a radicalization path, had a political ideology. He carried that out, and it went from A to B. This one is similarly not, except for, and I'll stop here. The shooter's friends say he was an avid gamer, just like the Charlie Kirk shooter. Now, this led to all kinds of discussions and reactions about political violence and what is causing it in the country. This is, of course, a carry-on to the discussions that were happening after Charlie Kirk was murdered. So I want to start this by playing you a clip of JD Vance, who is going to say that violence happens because violence like at the ICE facility or Charlie Kirk, because people call Republicans and Trumpists and Trump himself bad words like Nazi or fascist. Here he is.
If you want to stop political violence, stop attacking our law enforcement as the Gestapo. If you want to stop political violence, stop telling your supporters that everybody who disagrees with you is a Nazi. If you want to stop political violence, look in the mirror. That's the way that we stop political violence in this country, and we got to do it.
So JD Vance is taking the line that is pretty popular these days on the American right, which is, Dan, and I'm pretty sure this is the technical term. It's a term that I remember from political theory. It might be in Derrida, but it's the strategy of whoever smelt it, dealt it. Dan, do you remember that? It might be Jean-Luc Nancy. I can't remember where I read it.
I'll try to remember the original French.
The French phrase is notoriously tricky on this. So basically they're saying you are causing violence because you're calling people like JD Vance and Donald Trump and Kash Patel and Stephen Miller fascists and Nazis. So because you are calling us that is leading to people like doing violence. That's the idea. Now, the reaction from the right is then, as we've discussed for so long, Dan, is to say, well, this means that Democrats and leftists and others are extremists. They are terrorists, and they should be labeled as such and pursued with the kind of abandon and chase that is fitting for someone like Osama bin Laden. So here's Kash Patel saying so much in the Oval Office.
And thanks to your recognition of this and this executive order and the AG's leadership to lead out and prosecute these individuals, we are properly going to chase them down like the domestic terrorists that they are, and our streets and our communities are going to be safer because the JTTF and the FBI and Treasury and DHS and DOJ are going to combine forces like never before to root out this new evil that is perpetuating our criminal activities across our societies.
Now, I noted this last week, Dan, and I'll note it again. This is a basically swapping of the language of Project Esther, which was ostensibly a project on anti-Semitism, and defunding what Project Esther calls the Hamas support networks. This is they did a find and replace, and they just put in Antifa and leftists. The case, though, they are trying to make is that if you recognize Trump and Vance and anyone else as doing things that are like fascism or like Nazism, then you are the one who's causing the violence. Okay? Think about that logic. And it's a classic logic. It's not, they're not original in this, but it's basically like this. Hey, why is there so much division? Let's play it out in a couple of stages. You ready, Dan? Why is there so much political division in this country? Why can't Democrats come to the middle? And Democrats try to come to the middle, and the American right says, oh, actually, the middle's over here. And they move it like 4 steps to the right. Democrats are like, oh, okay, yeah, we can, we'll scooch over. We'll scooch over. All right, we're scooching. Okay. Oh, middle's over here now. And it's 4 more steps. And then finally they have enough. Anybody who's not MAGA is like, this is not the middle. And what y'all are doing seems like fascism to me. It seems like something, I don't know, there's like people wearing masks with no marked cars kidnapping our neighbors. This seems like the Gestapo. And then the right's like, oh, okay. Guess you didn't want actually to come to the middle and have dialogue, huh? You just going to call us names? Yeah, so we show up in masks with no marked cars or warrants, and we kidnap people. Some of them die. Some of them are injured seriously. Sure. Oh, now you want to say that's Gestapo. Okay. Seems like you're the terrorist. Oh, yeah. Did we send people to El Salvador even though we weren't supposed to? Even though there was no due process? Maybe. But you want to call us anti-liberal and anti-constitutional? That you're the one who I think is probably the terrorist or the one causing violence. I mean, whoever smelt it, dealt it. You smelled the fascism. I think you're the fascist. I'm pretty sure it's you. Okay. So this is the position they're taking. And I have more to say because I'm going to give you 2 more examples, Dan, but you're a political, you're much more steeped in political and social theory than I am. Do you want to jump in?
I mean, all of that is there. The piece of taking what they say and then trying to reflect it back. And this is a Trump strategy that he's always done. Like somebody says, you're corrupt. Oh yeah, you're corrupt.
Yep.
It's like, I'm the rubber, you're glue kind of thing to use another, highly theoretical concept that can help us understand this. But the discourse about language and name calling, that can be a real thing. It's the selectivity of it. Everybody knows this. Like, let's go through a list of names like un-American or enemies
Vermin.
of the state or socialist or demonic or anti-Christian or political enemies. These are the words that are used on the right to describe everybody who's not MAGA and have been for a very long time. And this is what the critics of Trump will say is the rhetoric, in my view, did not originate on the left. I think the left has actually been slow to call some of these things what they actually are. Remember the days of referring to things Trump said as something that some construed to be racially insensitive? That's how people used to talk about this. We've come a long ways from that. My point is, if you want to talk about the name calling, cool. Let's talk about the name calling. Let's talk about the discourse. But this is, I think, all of this about the rhetoric, about the language, about so-called free speech, because I don't think these issues are really about free speech for the right. It's about what I would talk about, not free speech, but it's about talking, by which I mean saying the right things in terms of things that are approved, things that those in power like. So if you're calling somebody a name that they like, they're not going to worry about the fact that you're name calling. If you're out there saying that these people are enemies of America, remember that with the media calling the media the enemy of the state, and and you had media people worried about shootings and things like this. Remember all of that happening? That was not left-wing rhetoric. That was rhetoric coming from MAGA world. It's not about name calling. It's about calling people names that we on the right don't support. So it's about talking right, saying the right things, but also saying the things that the right says. Anything the right says, by definition now, is acceptable and is allowable. Anything that contests that, they're working to define it as violent speech or hate speech or what have you, and do all the sort of cancel culture stuff that they used to cry about and accuse the left of doing, right? In very explicit cases like Kimmel or other things that we could talk about. So I think all of this is there. So yeah, if somebody, and this is what I tell people all the time, you'll hear this, Uncle Ron will talk about this or whatever, and you've got to discern when somebody wants to have a good faith conversation and when they don't.
That's it.
There are people in the world who will say, well, yeah, but I mean, isn't it bad to maybe call them fascists or Nazis? If people hate that and they take that really seriously, isn't that bad? And you could say, yeah, maybe let's talk about that. But what about terms like enemy of the state or un-American, or telling people that, I don't know, a whole party is like a bunch of groomers who are kidnapping children? You get the Pizzagate rhetoric, all of that sort of stuff. If you're talking to somebody who can actually hear that, who maybe can reframe that. They've just never thought about it before. Or maybe they just, like a lot of people, we talk about these shooters who don't have a coherent political ideology. Guess what? Most people in our lives don't either. And there are people in our lives that when you can say, look, here are things that this person said, or here are examples of this, they honestly did not know those examples because they're also caught up in the fire hose of the 24-hour news cycle, and they don't remember things that happened 3 months ago or 6 months ago or 2 years ago. If you can engage people like that, great. But most of the time, it's not somebody acting in good faith. And when they come at you with this kind of language about language, it's not because they're worried about the language. It's because they are grinding their ideological axe, and we have to recognize that and try to respond.
Well, just we're going to be good faith after Trump became the leader. And what you're left with is what they want. You know what they want? They want a situation where people who are not MAGA have no choice but to say, what you're doing seems fascist. What you're doing is illiberal. What you're doing is anti-constitutional. What you're doing reminds me of the Nazis. And for them to come back and say, well, you're the extremist. You're the terrorist. You're the one causing the violence by calling us the bad names, even though some of you are thinking this right now. JD Vance is the one who texted all his friends that Donald Trump might be Hitler someday. Here's one more piece of evidence if y'all don't believe me. Here's Kristi Noem talking about Democrats this week.
But as the DHS secretary, would you say that Democrats are a domestic extremist organization? Yes or no?
Views are extreme and they don't align with the American people at all. And I wish that our media and I wish reporters like you, Caitlin, would talk about the victims every day.
So she says they are extremists. Okay. All right. Let's do some more good faith banter. I don't know, Dan. Here's Steve Bannon at Charlie Kirk's funeral.
Well, I actually think they are popular, but it's not the way those kids look from kindergarten all the way up. They are essentially, a third of the teachers are terrorists that are trying to form them. If you look at the radical SEL, you look at all this radical, the way they're formed.
Here it is. If you missed it, Steve Bannon just said that 1/3 of public school teachers are, quote, terrorists. Do you know any school teachers? I do. I got a brother who teaches 3rd grade. And he spends a lot of his own money making his classroom something where kids can learn the best they can. He gets up every day and goes in there and says, they're never going to pay me enough money and I'm never going to be a wealthy person, but I'm here because I love these kids. And this dude's calling him a terrorist. So let's talk about good faith and all that. The point is this. You know what they want, Dan? They want a situation where there's no chance for talking and it's just force. Let me give you one more example of this. Okay. Here is Tom Barrack. Now, Tom Barrack is the U.S. envoy to Syria. And he's in an interview. And he's talking about the Middle East.
Look, the end game when we say peace, it's an illusion. There's never been peace. There will probably never be peace because everybody's fighting for legitimacy. So people say, well, they're fighting over borders and boundaries. It's not what they're fighting over. A border or boundary is the currency of a negotiation. The end result is somebody wants dominance, which means somebody has to submit. In that part of the world, submit, there's no Arabic word for submit. They can't wrap their head around submit. So eventually, prosperity is the only answer.
He says there's no Arabic word for submit. They can't wrap their head around it. And he really says that peace is not possible because one group wants to dominate and the other has to submit. Dan, they want the Carl Schmitt friend enemy. You submit or I do. It's a fight to the death. The days of dialogue, understanding, Dan's dying. I know, I'm going to let you in. The days of dialogue and understanding are gone. There's no good faith discussion. There is only either you're the terrorist or me, and we'll figure out who has the bigger guns and the most force, and that'll decide it.
The same Republican Party in their Islamophobic and anti-Islamic things would emphasize the fact that, of course, the word Islam means submission. It means submission to Allah. That was the whole thing. The one submits to Allah, and it was that Muslims are violent and dangerous. They want everybody to submit because their religion is built on submission and so forth. I accept none of that. I'm not putting that out there to say that that's what Islam is, but that was the line And now you have this notion that Arabic doesn't have a word for submit, and it's because they don't understand submission that they're dangerous. It is just such a moving target that we have to understand that it's not about reasons or evidence or rationale. It is deeper, and it's about deeply held emotions and biases and anger and all of that stuff. And we just have to understand that that's
It's
what
about
drives
feelings. This is never about facts. You
Yeah.
all, come on. There was never any facts involved with this. Tylenol, submission. It doesn't matter what we talk about today. It's all feelings. There is no facts involved. All right. Let's just do some more like, okay, so here's what we're talking about. We're talking about political violence, what causes it, what leads to political violence, and all that. And JD Vance was our top of the segment guy who said, well, you guys keep calling us bad names, and so that's causing the violence. And so what do they do in turn? They say Democrats are extremists. Kristi Noem. Kash Patel says we're going to hunt them down because they're terrorists. Steve Bannon says teachers are terrorists. And then this week, Trump went to the UN, and the elevator stopped abruptly. And this turned into, I mean, this was like the Dreyfus affair meets JFK assassination meets, I mean, this was a, you know, this was a world-changing event on the right. And you all are like, no, Brad, you're just being funny. You're trying to score some points. You and Dan are not funny anyway. Cut it out. All right, well, here's Jesse Waters. Jesse Waters says that in response to the escalator stopping, Dan, that the UN should be bombed or gassed.
What's going on with the escalator? What do you think?
Yeah, they sabotaged them.
Yeah.
And they could have hurt the first lady.
Yeah.
Trump would have fallen and he would have gotten back up. But, you know,
They would have blamed it on his rhetoric.
And then they sabotaged the teleprompter.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an insurrection. And what we need to do is either leave the UN or we need to bomb it. It is in New York, though, right?
Yeah,
there could be some fallout there.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Maybe gas it?
No.
Let's not do
Don't
that.
gas it. Okay.
He's
But we
kidding,
need to
he's
destroy it. Maybe just, can we demolish the building?
We could turn it
Have
into-
everybody leave and then we'll demolish the building?
Tell me again about good faith dialogue, about, I don't know, not using violent language. I don't know. Weren't there people who were supposed to be fired for like this kind of thing when Charlie Kirk was murdered? This was not alone. I mean, this is not like the only one of these, right? Cernovich, the like provocateur, the very popular right-wing person who gets people going on the American. The second that escalator stopped, bullets should have been flying at the UN staffers who orchestrated this attack, rendering our president a sitting duck. So the minute the escalator stopped, we should have started shooting. Not sure who. We don't know who did it. We still don't know seemingly who did it, but start shooting anyway.
Well, I've actually read they think that they're like, safety mechanisms at the top of the escalator. So things don't get sucked down in. And what I've read is that they think somebody in his group triggered one of those. And apparently it happens all the time. People always complain, I guess, about the UN escalators because I guess it's sensitive or whatever. Yeah, no grand conspiracy, just a safety sensor on the escalator that stopped it from moving. But we need to unleash all the shock and awe of America's military might against the UN because an escalator stopped and Trump can't walk upstairs.
Think about all the times Trump has made menacing, violent remarks about people. All the times he said, shoot him, punch him, hurt him. All the times he said, oh, maybe the American citizens are next for deportation. And what's the line? He's joking. We don't take that stuff seriously. He's joking. And then an escalator stops and it's like gas them, bomb them, shoot them because we know they did this on purpose and we got to get them. And you know what that shows me, man, is like they saw Trump and Melania for like 10 seconds kind of embarrassed, like, oh, the thing stopped. And it stopped at a time when it seems like maybe it was on purpose. I don't know. We don't know, but it just kind of stopped and everyone's watching. And what do we do now? And does Trump have the physical fitness to walk up these stairs? We have to see. And that one iota of embarrassment justifies shooting, gas, and killing. That's what this has always been about.